this year's theme is Inspire Inclusion, and that's what we hope to do from the event today. I don't think I've ever been in a sort of virtual room with so many female leaders, so I'm really excited, and hopefully we get a lot of good conversation. So yeah, I guess kicking off with introductions, I'll start. So I'm Hannah. I've been at Mustard coming up to 9 years now, focusing on recruitment for graphic design. For those, I think everyone should know who Mustard are on this chat, but we're a specialist creative design recruiter across interiors, graphics, events, exhibitions, VFX, gaming, so all sorts really. And yeah, I wanted to join this, being one of the senior leaders at Mustard, one of the only female ones, being a single mum as well to a little girl. Like, this is really important. So yeah, chuffed that they're all here. So let's start with Kat Kevin. Kat, can you give us a bit of an introduction, why you're here, what you do?
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much. My name's Kat Kevin. I am the chair of NAWI, the Network of Women Events. Those of you who aren't familiar, NAWI is all centred around providing a safe space, supporting women at all stages of their careers, and our three pillars are networking, job opportunities, and increasing representation. If you identify as female and you're in the event space, you're already part of the community. There is no membership, and it's a Facebook group. And then my other hat is that I run Electric Cat Production. We are a marketing and event agency specialising in B2B marketing for events companies.
Who have we got next on our slideshow? Tina, welcome. Do you want to do a bit of an introduction?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Hannah, for inviting me today. It's great to be here. So I'm Tina Connell. I'm Operations Director at Buckley Gray Yeoman, an architecture and design firm. Previously, I was Director of People and moved into the operations role nearly 2 years ago. I've been at BGY since 2017, and I've been in the industry now for over 20 years. BGY itself was formed in 1997, and we currently rank number 25 in the AJ 100 listings. And last year we were awarded Practice of the Year award, which was a really, really great accolade. But it's really great to be here this afternoon to talk about this interesting topic. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Who have we got next? Heather. Hi, Heather.
Hi, lovely to see everybody. I've worked with Mustard for a couple of years, and I spent 20 years in a corporate recruitment role as a HR director. So things to do with inclusion have been kind of part of my career forever. And when I started my career a very long time ago, the idea that we'd have this many women leaders in a room was just not possible. So one of the things about this day is it's wonderful to celebrate how far we have come. You know, we genuinely have. I could tell you stories that make your hair stand on end. That's not to say that we need to be complacent, because we really don't. And there's loads more to do in so many areas. But it's great to be part of this. Thank you, Hannah.
Dr. Emma, welcome.
Hi everyone. Yeah, really great to be here, and thanks for inviting me. So I am Emma, and I'm an academic. So I'm probably here with a bit of a different focus to a lot of you working in the industry. I specialise in researching leadership in events and hospitality and tourism sectors. And in recent years, I've kind of pivoted a bit, and I've started to really focus on gender and leadership, particularly in the event industry, but in some of the other creative industries as well. So hopefully I'll be able to give you a bit of research-based insights as we go through.
Thanks, Emma. Amber, is Amber on the call?
Yeah, hi.
Yes, hello.
Hi, everybody. Really cool to be here with you today, so thank you for inviting me. My name's Amber. I'm the founder and co-founder of Pequel Limited. So we make women's urinals to get women out of the queues and back to the events. So we launched at Glastonbury in 2022 and have just had an upward increase, sort of disrupting the festival and events market as a sort of tackling quite a big taboo around women's health and women in investment, but also just sort of shining a light on the inequality of access to facilities women have and what we've come to expect. So actually making this thing that's become normalized something that we need to tackle it and solve. So it's been a bit of a journey so far, but But yeah, our team swells to about 20 over the summer. And yeah, me and my co-founder Hazel, as two young female founders, have had all sorts of experiences that we can talk about. Some good, some bad. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Amber. Kat, hello.
Hi, hello, Amber. What an incredible product. I'm on your website already and checking that out. That's amazing. Very cool. I'm Kat Howe. I'm founder and executive creative director of How and How. We are a branding agency. We have offices in London and LA, and I founded about 3 years ago with my husband. Yes, we do lots of we're B Corp pending currently, and we do a lot of initiatives around people and planet. But one of our big things is trying to mitigate gender pay gap. So we have an open, tiered, transparent salary system in place, and we're just trying to lead, hopefully by example, because a lot of creative agencies are led by men, and I feel like it's our duty to try and do something a bit different. Yeah, so we work with mostly tech brands, climate tech, femtech, anyone with a good idea basically that wants to change the world. That's
Lovely. Thank you. Grace, welcome.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. So I'm also run a brand agency. We are based just outside London in Essex. So the business is named Afra. It's named after Afra Ben, who was the first female playwright in the 1600s to begin writing under her own name. And she disrupted the status quo for women. And if anyone's familiar with Virginia Woolf, she basically had a quote about Afra Ben where she said that all women should lay flowers at the tomb of Afra, because it was because of her that we have the right to speak in our own voices. And that's kind of, that ethos has been through all of my business. I started the business when I was 26. So I've gone through the highs and lows of being considered a naive and young blonde female that doesn't know what she's talking about in meetings with lots of older men. I've had 4 miscarriages while running my business, so I've had a lot of experience of trauma and my own personal health challenges. I have had 2 beautiful daughters in that time who are my guiding light in terms of building a business and what the future should look like for women. One of them is 4 and the other is 4 months old. So very much understand from a parent's perspective. And I also have a real, let's say, chip on my shoulder about the lack of support in place for female founders that have children from a government level. And it's something that I've been really working to look at with different brands that we work with in terms of how we lobby for change. And in the same light, because I have young girls who are obviously watching my every footstep, one of my key passions is about how do we get young girls into female entrepreneurship, and looking at all the challenges and barriers to entry, not just considering girls that are in privileged positions, where they might have access to different resources or people around them that have that mindset. But I don't want finances or social status to be a barrier to women understanding their potential. So I've been looking at how I can roll out these projects without discriminating in that respect. And it's been very interesting and eye-opening seeing that, and then looking at how we then, once we get girls in that right mindset to be the future leaders, how we then support them so that childcare is not a reason for dropout, because as many of you probably have seen, the statistics are very, very high between, I think it's the ages of about 25 and 35 for female dropout based on personal reasons, which is obviously the window for having children. So it's my goal to keep as many women that run businesses in those positions throughout having children and being empowered by the visibility that other women going through that can have. So obviously, if you look at my LinkedIn, there's a lot of content about what that looks like for me. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, we're going to cover sort of maternity and childcare, and I had a feeling I think that's going to be one of the most heated and yeah, talked around topics. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you. Who have we got next? Phil's joining us. Are you there, Phil?
Hi, Hannah. Thanks for having me along, everybody. A slightly different voice in the room. I am Phil. I've been with Mustard for 11 years. I've started my life as a recruitment consultant and have developed my role into people and culture at Mustard. I'm very much here as a bit of a learning day, a learning hour. I see it as. In my role, I want to find out how we can offer personal development opportunities, how we can address gender bias and the stereotypes surrounding all different types of gender, and ultimately, with Hannah in the room as well, how we can empower and develop leadership opportunities for females in our business. My background was predominantly interior design recruitment, which is a pretty evenly split industry between male and female workers. So I feel I've got a foot in both camps, but I'm very aware that Mustard was founded by 3 males. It's ran by a majority male leadership team, and it's something that I personally am very aware of and would like to learn how we can better ourselves and offer better opportunities for everybody.
Thanks, Phil. Tia, hello.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Tia. I've worked at Mustard for about 8 months now, recruiting into events, exhibitions and experiential. I can't say I know everything about the events industry. Every day I have to learn something new through conversation to conversation. But what I do know is that the people I do speak to are really creative, really focused and really passionate about what they do. I want to be part of this because obviously I'm a woman of colour, and diversity and inclusion is really important to me personally. And I think that diversity is independent thinking transferred into community, and that only makes for a better tomorrow.
Thanks, Tia. Yeah. And then finally, I think, Ebony. Hello, welcome.
Hello, it's great to be here. I started as an apprentice 2 years ago here at Mustard. I've developed into a contract care role, looking after Mustard's contractors and clients. I'm joining today to give a junior perspective on things and as an inspiring leader.
Thanks, Ebony. Right, so I guess let's just get into it. Let's kick things off. I'm conscious that we've got a lot of opinions and 45 minutes to cram them in. So yeah, Vicky found a fact that sort of 23% of designers identify as female, with 79% men dominating managerial positions. So yeah, I mean, there's various factors to that. And the first, I guess, talking point that I want to bring up, how do we bridge the gap between student and employee, with 63% of graphic design students being women, but only 17% making it to creative director level? Emma, can we kick things off with you, sort of being in the education sort of field? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, those stats are very similar to the stats that you'll see in a lot of the creative industries, actually. It's somewhere around 70% of the undergraduate student base are women, but the leadership roles tend to be about 20% of women. So there is a really big disparity there. And we know that some of the obvious barriers to leadership exist, which I think we're probably all really familiar with, in terms of the gender pay gap and the motherhood penalty and things like that. I think from a kind of student perspective, my biggest kind of red flag would be the confidence issue. So I think we're probably not teaching our young women to think about leadership roles, and there's a lot of issues around the lack of role models and the lack of seeing people who look like you. And of course, for people with disabilities or people of colour, things are much worse because the representation isn't there. So I think there's an issue around what we tell young women about what their future can look like, and kind of what they're aspiring to achieve. But the other thing I think that there's a kind of big gap is between the students who we are teaching, who have the opportunity to gain experience, and the students who don't get to gain that experience. And I think that becomes an issue when they move into the world of work, or attempt to move into the world of work. And of course, Hannah, you'll be much more aware of this than I am in terms of trying to get them jobs. But I think that, for us, the key issue has always been around trying to make them employable. And again, we see that, male students are more willing to put themselves out there. They're more willing to take opportunities. They're more willing to ask for opportunities and put their hands up. And the women lack confidence with that. So I think there is some work to do there. And I'll probably leave it to some of you in industry to think about what kind of things you might be doing to support them. But I guess from a higher education institution, we'd be asking for you to think about offering opportunities to students and making those opportunities meaningful, but also paying for those opportunities so that all students, even those disadvantaged ones, can take advantage of them.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to know, I guess. I'm really happy we've got a range of people here from a range of creative industries, whether that is a disparity between those. Are interior students less likely to apply than event students? And if anybody else has got any thoughts on this.
Yeah, within the architecture industry, it's I don't know if everybody's aware, but it does take 7+ years in order to qualify, and that's a lot of investment for students. And I know I haven't got the statistics to hand, but it's often the case that women at the start of the education process, it's very much a 50-50 balance. But when it gets to the end, it's greatly reduced. And I've been really pleased to see over the last couple of years the implementation of apprenticeship schemes and also other ways of people to work whilst they learn. University of Sheffield have a great scheme, and we support we're part of that group as well, but there's also the London School of Architecture. And I think what it's doing, it's making architecture more accessible on a number of different levels, because funding yourself for 7 years to qualify is a very, very big investment. So I'm pleased to see that the architecture sector is changing, and there are a lot of schemes out there and initiatives aimed at encouraging more people from diverse backgrounds into the sector. So it's going in the right way, but there's still a lot more that can be done.
Yeah, definitely. Amber, you had your hand up next.
Yeah. Hi, so I guess I was a student 3.5 years ago. I graduated from Bristol University, came straight into a lockdown. So we actually incorporated my business Pequel in a lockdown. And I studied anthropology with innovation at university. And during that course, we were encouraged to have, it was a set part of the course, we were encouraged to have client-led briefs, which meant that we were able to have real world experience with real customers, real clients, which we could have network opportunities with. And we were meeting with our clients, we were having one-to-one, group to client meetings, we were pitching back to them. And I think that whole experience was wonderful because it really increased our confidence at interacting in the real world. It wasn't a test run, it was the real world with safety net. And I think coming from a student's point of view, for me, that was really, really helpful because it was like this huge opportunity that you got, but you had this massive safety net underneath you and you were learning as you went, and the client understood that was the situation you were in. So I just wanted to be a sort of case study for the how good that experience was, and to encourage any industry to make space for that to happen. And I don't know if that's via universities, or if it's just separate and open to whoever, but I think definitely is worthwhile. And for me as a woman in that class, I definitely learned sort of more holistic tools, such as counting to 3 every time you were afraid to put your hand up and making you put your hand up, or having these little tricks that sort of put you in the position where you feel like, okay, I'm a little bit out of my depth, but I'm here and I'm going to say something. And that sort of small sort of courageous acts built my confidence because I had them validated because they were sort of within this sort of learning environment. So yeah, I think I just wanted to shed some light into my own experience there. But
that's a really good point. As a recruiter, one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get from my clients on graduates and juniors is they haven't got the confidence, they haven't got the client facing experience. So actually that is extremely valuable. And I think, definitely something we should all be taking on.
Sorry, I just want to add, it just meant that when I graduated university, I already had 3 years of client-led experience under my belt. So like in the world that we live in today, thousands of applicants graduate every year. How are you supposed to stand out? So like that is something that really helps people. And I was able to get offers from all sorts of consultancies with very lacking experience, but still something that put me on a different path. So yeah, really, really helpful.
Okay, and just quickly, Grace, do you have a point on this one as well?
Yeah, so one of the interesting stats that I've always had in my head, and obviously it's really shocking when you look at the 63% against the 17%, but actually it gets even worse in terms of agency owners. So I'm not sure the year the research was done, but it was found that 0.1% of creative agencies are owned by women. So I've always had that in my mind, even though the majority of the time when you look at particularly with the sort of entry-level positions are very much held by women in creative industries. Actually, owning an agency is a very different beast entirely from all of this. So I've always found that really fascinating. From my own experience of going from student to employee, when I was at university, I studied for 3 years for my BA, and then I did a master's degree, and I was very fortunate. I got a scholarship through Santander to do my master's degree. But during that time, at the time I wanted to be a journalist, and I knew that I needed to, like everything that has just been said about putting myself out there and getting that experience. And I hustled, like I emailed everyone I could. I was like, I want to come and work with you. And I was very fortunate. I got internships. I lived in Singapore for one of my years in university, and I got an internship for 4 months with Elle Singapore. I worked with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I worked with Red Magazine. I worked with British Vogue, and I was very fortunate to get all that experience so that by the time I graduated from my master's, I was able to go straight into a job with British Vogue. That being said, the only reason I was able to do all of that was because I also was very fortunate to have a boyfriend that was 5 years older than me, who never went to a university and was in a job that was being paid. And he let me live with him rent free. He paid like all the various times I couldn't afford to do things. He basically financially bankrolled me to do those things. And at one point I was paying £50 a day on my train fare to go into London, and I was being paid, or reimbursed, should I say, by the company, £52 before tax. So I was earning £2 before tax in order to do that. So actually, from almost like a social point of view, if you haven't got that support structure or that financial leverage, then even with the best intentions of pursuing that and developing your skills, you're never going to be able to get beyond the start point. And then as an employer, having seen it from that also side of the field, interestingly, whenever I've interviewed young graduates, the females that I've interviewed have almost struggled to talk. Like they've really, really struggled to articulate themselves, and their lack of confidence has come through very visibly. And when I get proactive applications from people when I'm not applying, advertising a job, they're typically from young male graduates. So
I think it all comes back down to this confidence thing, doesn't it? And hopefully events like this, conversations like this, particularly with the likes of Ebony. Sorry, we're going to move on, Ebs, but I will try and come back to you. But yeah, I think it's really important that we are all involved in this conversation, from student through to director level. Right, let's move on to the next point. This one I think Phil touched on briefly earlier. How can we eliminate the gender bias in recruitment? So yeah, there can be a gender bias in job descriptions, which I, as a sort of somebody who's been writing job descriptions for 10 years, I have to really step back and think about that all the time. We as a business use gender bias checkers now to try and resolve this issue, but there's so many other sticking points in the industry. Phil, should we kick off with you on this one? Because I know you had a chat with sort of internally with the team not long ago on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a recruitment standpoint and being in a recruitment agency, I think we as a business are quite good at our employability of both males and females. But as you've just mentioned, our gender bias checker for when we're putting job adverts out both internally and externally has led, I believe, to a larger split. So a more even split, between the genders that are applying to jobs, and that's something that we've been able to do in relative ease using AI for a good thing. We have tried to move towards blind applicants as well, and trying to ask people to apply for jobs without any kind of name or email or anything that might lead us to believe what gender they may be, so that we don't have any unconscious bias in that way. It is a difficult thing, and it's something that we're certainly working on in our business, but we're also finding that our clients are asking for us to implement these ED&I processes as well, which is encouraging us even further to make sure we're implementing them as a business from our side. I came onto this call very aware that well, I didn't want us as Mustard to be preaching and saying do this, do that, when actually we've got an awful lot to learn ourselves when it comes to our internal hiring. I think for us as well, a big thing is having diverse interview panels, having people like yourself, Hannah, or Ebbs or Tia, being able to sit in on interview stages so that we can show people that there's role models and mentorship available for people in this business. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I hope that helps in some way.
Yeah, and Heather, you had something to...
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far, but I want to go back to something you said earlier, Hannah, which is about the confidence piece, because even before we get to how we write adverts and how we do interviews, and panels are brilliant, mixed panels are fantastic, we need to encourage people to apply for the jobs. And there's so much data out there that says that women will apply for a job when they hit 80% of the criteria, whereas men will apply for a job when they hit 60%. And there's that we really need to be thinking about, and actively going out and encouraging women to apply for these opportunities and positions before we ever get to interviews and other kinds of bias that comes later.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Heather. Emma, you had something.
Yeah, I just firstly, just to say it's really great about the job descriptions. There is loads of research that says that the people who write the job descriptions actually write them based on themselves. So if men are writing the job descriptions, and they're writing them set for, other men. And one of the things, kind of just an exercise that you might want to do in your own agencies or your own organisations, is this notion of the ideal worker, which some of you might be familiar with. But basically, you can get your teams and your staff to write down who they think the ideal worker is in your organisation, and you'll get really quickly a picture of, do they think, and some of them won't assign gender necessarily, but they will say things like available 9 till 5, or always available to pick up the phone, or, can come to a meeting at any point. And a lot of those things are structural, cultural processes that are kind of embedded into your organisations without you realising they're there, which are not gender neutral. And are not really set up to help women, and often they're set up to support men and keep women away from the world of work. So you can do that exercise in your organisations and think about things like your job descriptions and the way that you're recruiting and the people that you're recruiting, and think about whether you've got this ideal worker going on that you haven't quite recognised. It's just an idea for you.
I think we've been guilty of it before as a business, and probably most recruitment businesses have, of using these really masculine terms like we need assertive people, competitive people, in the world of sales, which really can put women off. So yeah, completely agree with that. Oh, Tia.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on this one in terms of obviously being a recruiter. What I find is that having conversations with clients, if you know exactly what it is that you want and you give me the time of day, or maybe you have a specific goal in mind, I mean, it's not a bad thing to say, I don't feel like we have enough women in our business and it would be nice to have some female leadership. Obviously it's our job every day to look for the people for you. And your bias as a company may not be there where we're working independently with you, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's always really good to trust and discuss with a recruiter if you're using one, because that could be really helpful as well.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Tia. Kat Howe. Sorry, I don't like using your full name, but there's two here. It's very formal.
Yeah, no, but just quickly, just touching on this point as well. Actually, we've started using. Actually, it's a client of ours. But they're called Tuscarilla, and it's one of many programs. But their aim is to eliminate the CV completely. So we've used this as one part of our interview process, and it's basically a series of data-driven screening tests and video responses, personality tests, and the idea being that I think there's about 100 different unconscious biases that you pick up on when reading a CV, which is a crazy statistic, but the idea being that it's completely blank. You don't know who is applying, and you just apply via something that you don't know someone's name, you don't know someone's gender, and we actually didn't go that far, but we then used it to help us with personality tests later, which we tried to mitigate against gender. But it's it's an interesting other facet, I think, especially with AI and this new way of, I suppose it sounds awful, but like compartmentalizing people so that we don't use biases, because that's one of the only ways we can avoid that. And I think it was really interesting because we made a couple of hires that we, like, personality wise, we struggled with in the hiring team, but actually it was really good. We had this extra set of data that was able to almost take us away from these human responses we all have towards certain people. I was always drawn towards more women. I was like, but is it because you never really know? And I think there's only one way of being able to mitigate that properly, and that's by trying to eliminate gender completely.
Yeah, and I always think, whether I've worked in graphic design and branding for nearly 10 years, but if you hire just people that you're like and you're all the same, how are you going to, meet those client briefs and come up with those big ideas if all of your ideas are the same? So I think that's really important. And we'll have one more on this, Tina, and then we'll move on to the next, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. I'm thinking about the talent attraction piece in terms of the actual role itself and the times of work, etc., making sure that it's really that we're questioning ourselves as employer, that we're demonstrating flexibility from day one, even in the job advert, so that it's not just sort of the 9 to 5, or that we're offering flexibility from day one, because obviously with other sort of family parental demands, having that flexibility is key. And I think we just get into a habit of sort of saying, oh no, it's 40 hours a week, 9 till 6, 40 hours a week in 5 days, and offering that is really key to make sure that we're reaching the biggest talent pool possible.
Yeah, Tina, you've led us really nicely, a nice segue into the next talking point, actually, which was how can we improve the relationship between employers and maternity? So Pentagram partner Marina Willer said that she had noticed a lot of women who have taken those leadership positions have decided either not to have children or not able to because of the pressure of work. And I guess, going to your point, Tina, that lack of flexibility. I guess everybody's is going to have opinions here. Heather, should we start with you? I guess with your experience around employment law and things, maternity, I imagine, comes up a fair bit in the conversations that you have.
Yeah, it does. And my view is that employers fall into two camps, really. You get employers who are fantastic and who really want to do something about this. And I've come across, I'd sort of not realised how bad some employers are, because most of the people I deal with are great at this. But having helped a couple of women who've been let go, the minute they announced they were pregnant, you kind of go, really? This is still happening? How can this be? It's appalling. But for me, this is about help employers to understand that pregnancy is just a normal part of life. People have babies, live with it. Change happens in organisations, and it's almost not about maternity. It's about understanding that change happens. People leave, people want sabbaticals, they go on long holidays, they have caring responsibilities, they have all kinds of things happen. If your organisation isn't robust enough to deal with change when it happens, how are you going to cope with women having babies, which they've done for millennia? And so I think sometimes we overcomplicate this stuff by letting people say, oh, I'm not going to employ a woman because she's going to have a baby. I still hear that from men, and I find it astonishing that people just don't understand that change happens. People have time off and it's okay. Yeah, it's not the end of the world, and we have to help organisations to be resilient rather than necessarily just addressing maternity.
Thanks, Heather. Grace, we'll come to you.
Yeah, I think there's so many nuances to this kind of topic, and it's a huge area that obviously needs a lot of discussion on so many levels. But I think when we talk about women having babies, and that's what you're just alluding to, I think it's actually couples, whether it's male male, female female, female male, whatever it is, they are having babies, or sometimes it's just a woman on her own. But it's not, like we talk about maternity leave, but what about paternity leave? My husband worked in a large organisation, and he was allowed 2 weeks statutory. We couldn't afford for him to take statutory pay, so he was allowed 2 weeks working from home, which is not statutory leave or any kind of paternity leave. Well, what's the knock-on mental health impact on me for not having that support from my partner and not having him around? And then, like as an example with our baby, he leaves for work at 5 a.m. Our baby's crying at 4 a.m. for a feed. I work, he works. So who takes over? We've got to support the men in this just as much as the women, because actually for the women to remove that gender bias and all of those things, we've got to see it that they are both taking on parental responsibility, and we need to have that on all different levels. And I think the other thing that needs to be considered is also then the financial implications. So as a small business, I would absolutely love to give both sets of parents proper leave, but also I'm not supported as a business owner in wanting to grant that to my employees. And there is a commercial aspect which is unavoidable of, can I afford to do this? Like, as much as I would love to be, I'd love to do all the things, but anything around employee wellbeing packages, whether it's like cultural things or health packages or whatever, they all carry a cost with them that has to be covered by the business. And if you're a large organisation, it should almost go without saying that there is an element of that, but it's difficult. And so I had someone who I really valued, and I wanted to get her to work with us, and I went to her and I said, I've got this job, I'd love to have you in the business. And she said, I've got a problem. She was like, I'm pregnant. I've just found out I'm going to be having a baby. So I was like, oh, I don't care. Like, apply. That's fine. And then she said, but where I'm at the moment has got a much better maternity package, and I can't compete on a financial level with a very large organisation that has a lot more support and financial backing within it. So I think there is an element of that needs to be explored. And how do we ensure SMEs can? Because the government support at the moment, stat pay, is lower than benefits. It's lower than being out of work. It's lower than the national living wage. Like, it's absolute pittance. And if you are on the other side, the employee, like you're the boss, you are not entitled to statutory pay whatsoever. If you do take any form of, I think it's got a different name, but it's basically the same amount of money. You are only allowed 10 keeping in touch days to run your business, which is impossible as a business owner. So there is absolutely no financial support as the boss, which is even worse than being the employee. So I think there is so many different levels to this conversation. And yeah, it's just kind of,
we couldn't cover it in 10 minutes, could we really? I think those keeping in touch days are really important. When I went off and had my daughter, sort of, I guess that fear was, I'm going to get replaced, somebody's going to come in, can I be a leader? I guess it comes back to that confidence thing, but actually having your employer use that terminology, have those keeping in touch days, making me feel like I could go off, enjoy that time and come back was really important. Whereas I think sometimes, particularly, with maternity cover and stuff, there is that worry of, am I going to have my job in 9 months' time, 12 months' time? Emma, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, well, just to echo a lot of what's been said, first of all, women are repeatedly telling us in our research that it is having children and childcare and caregiving responsibilities that are causing barriers to leadership. And one of there's lots of things that can be done. One of the key things is kind of that cultural shift, which I think talks to including the men as well. So paternity pay and, thinking about flexible working, which works for both, anyone really, doesn't it? Flexible working's not gender specific, but also the women specifically the women in our studies tell us that they have problems with being able to share workload, so being able to tell other people what they're doing so they can hand over when they need to leave, if they've got to leave suddenly for school pickup or emergencies and so on, and issues around being able to work from home and overwhelming amounts of work and lack of opportunity to job share and stuff like that. So there are some things that all business owners could be looking at, I think, to improve the situation. But I totally take the point that SMEs are in it's much harder to ensure that women can stay within the business when you haven't got as much money.
Yeah, definitely. Has anybody else got anything they want to add on this topic while we're still here with a few minutes to spare? Phil. Hi, Phil.
Hello.
Sorry, I didn't mean to sound surprised there. That was
That's okay. I've known you long enough. I had this conversation with my fiance last night when I told her that I would be joining on this, and how it's kind of echoing a point already made, but the split between the paternity and maternity. And yes, we are an SME, and I'm not in control of the finances here. I can tell you what financial burden having a split paternity maternity would put on us being a 60% male workforce. But we were saying that it's almost a matter that's bigger than we are right now in this conversation. It's about how can government, how can they support us as workers, both male and female, in being able to get through the process of having children. It's the same here, right? As a male, I would get 2 weeks off for my paternity, where Shona may want to return to work after 4 or 5 months, and we might want to split that, but those options are not open to us as employees. And I think it is, as someone said, it's both sides of the coin, right? If it is a male female or male female, having both parents being able to have the same amount of time off or be able to split that would, I think, benefit not just women in the workplace, but every employer in the workplace.
Yeah, I don't think it's talked about enough, Phil, that how it affects men. Like at the time, my partner had 2 weeks off and he was gutted. It felt like 2 days he'd had off, and then he wasn't in the right mindset going back to work. I was grumpy and tired. It's not talked about enough. So yeah,
I've got a lot more people taking shared parental leave, actually. So I've got a good ratio of male colleagues to female colleagues taking shared parental leave. So I think that, but it's very hard. I haven't got equal the amounts of funding. We have a very, very good enhanced maternity pay. Haven't quite got that with paternity, but I have increased the level of shared parental pay for male colleagues. But I completely agree with you, Phil, around having the government do more in terms of providing better funds to help support both male and female mothers and fathers in that position.
Yeah. It'd be really interesting to speak to you, Tina, about how you've managed to implement that, or you're going about implementing that as a business. And maybe it's something that we as a business can not only learn ourselves, but put over to other people that we work with.
Happy to.
Thank you.
Grace.
Yeah, so I completely agree about the government level. I've been, as I mentioned at the start, looking at how I can lobby for change at government level. But I also think it extends into so many different areas of society. So as an example, with my daughter's school, if anything ever went wrong, I guarantee I would be the first one they rang. With the doctors, they ring me first. And the other day, the doctor rang me to ask about my daughter. And my husband had been dealing with every single part of this issue. It was through his health insurance. And she was incredulous that I didn't know what she was talking about. I was like, you need to talk to my husband. I have no idea who he's been talking to or what about. And I spoke to someone about this the other day, and I said, why do they always ring us first? And she said, she was a mum, and she said, well, my husband doesn't know it, but I put his name first now on all of the documents so that they ring him first. And she was like, I've never told him that, but he gets all the calls. So I don't know whether how much that would change it, but the amount of times I've had snotty phone calls. I actually had one hospital appointment got cancelled for my daughter because I was in a meeting and I didn't answer the call about it, and yet they never tried ringing my husband and his number was on file. So again, it's not just government, it's also every single part of how we think about mothers and parents throughout the whole of our economy.
I'm successfully, which is nice, co-parent my daughter, is really amicable. 50% of the week she's with her dad, and people people are shocked every time. You're amicable, he has a 50% in the week, like amazing. It's like, oh no, that's what was expected. But yeah, it's funny people's reactions to that. Right, let's move on to our final talking point. And this one, again, is a big one. How can we diversify leadership within the creative industry? So men dominate 79% of managerial positions, which I think we've talked about a fair bit. I don't know, Kat, Kevin, do you want to, obviously with your work, do you want to get involved in this? I think you've...
Yeah, I would ring over the raised hand. I don't like to talk about because I'm not an absolute expert, and I'm massive best maternity and a couple of other topics. I think there are some great people in the room who've been able to share some really valuable opinions. I think it's super important having a diverse and inclusive representation, really. Something that I love to talk about. I dropped a couple of links in the chat, but for me, mentorship is one of the best ways that we can really support one another, engage with younger generations, help with that representation piece. And I personally wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the support and guidance and advice that I have received through mentorship, through being surrounded by so many incredible women. And I just absolutely love to see that now it is a bit easier than perhaps it was in the past. I think especially with being able to set up your own business, for instance, it's not super complicated, and there are lots of things that can be done. And I think going back to when I was first starting out in the industry, I didn't know many women that were, again, it's about representation, and I didn't see women in those roles that I could imagine that one day I could be that person. And I think it really is thanks to a couple of really inspiring women that I've met on my journey that I am where I am today. I don't know if that really answers the question.
I think it's important that confidence piece. I think if you've got other women who are successful, who are confident and sort of your cheerleader, then that's definitely going to get you to that leadership position, I think. Grace?
I completely agree with that. I had a really interesting experience yesterday where I had a really last minute call come in to do a client pitch, and I needed to get on it, and my childcare had run out literally half an hour before this call was due. I posted this on LinkedIn because it was such a nice moment, but I said to my team, oh no, I can't do it. And one of my team who would rather never be around kids if she could avoid it was like, don't worry, get her dropped off and we'll all look after her while you're on your call. So I had all my team juggling my 4-month-old around the office while I was doing this pitch. And I put it on LinkedIn, and everyone, it hadn't really occurred to me, but everyone said, look at how you've created that culture. Like, you have made that okay for the women in your workplace to see that it is okay to be a parent and a boss, that actually it's not a prohibitive thing to have your baby in the office. And I've never thought twice about it. Like, my kids are always in the office, and I encourage my employees to do the same. But I think it starts at the top. It's recognizing that, you know, as a parent, I understand the challenges. And, you know, this morning my daughter had a humongous half-an-hour tantrum because I did her hair wrong, and I get the stress that parents are going through in the morning trying to get their kids ready. So if you're half an hour late coming in, then so be it. You've had a tough morning. Get a cup of tea, chill out, and we'll talk when you've, you know, had that moment to reset. And so I think it's that leadership. But going back to my point, I made at the very start about supporting young girls into entrepreneurship. I'm very, very conscious, and I see this with my own children, that my daughter sees what I do, and she talks about, you know, wanting to do what mummy does, and she talks about mummy's office. But I also think about my nieces who are growing up in one of the most disadvantaged parts of Leicester, and they don't have access to those kind of women around them. So for me, the question is not so much how do people like my daughter get into it, because I almost think it's a given that she will, because she's been in that close proximity. But how do you access those girls who haven't got that access? They haven't got that those resources or network, and like you say, the confidence issues that might come with that. So I think it's representation, but also getting that through to all aspects of society.
Yeah, I think that point about office culture and the culture you've created is really important. It made me smile, actually, because Phil, I just remembered I brought my daughter in when she was about 6 weeks old, and I have a lovely photo of Phil cradling her while I went round and caught up with everybody. So yeah, I think that's super important. Where are we looking? So I guess another thing I wanted to bring up in this really is diversifying the leadership. We need to really understand the benefits of diversity in leadership as well. Has anybody got any points on that? Like what the benefits of that, and maybe actually rather than sort of hiring those leadership levels is sort of nurturing people from within. If you've hired a diverse level from a junior, sort of nurturing that.
That's really true, Hannah, because if you don't take a risk and bring some women in at senior levels, you can't create those role models for other women in the organisation. So you've got to either hire in and take some risks and develop people internally, because there are not so many women out there for you to find who've got that experience. If 79% of them are men everywhere else, you can't. So developing your own is absolutely the solution, and that's the only way you create good role models. And you create the job of a manager as not being seen as something that only men can do, because you can do it within school hours and you can do it around other caring responsibilities that you might have as a woman that aren't children, or all those other things. That you can be a menopausal woman who has managerial responsibilities and stay in the workplace, and all those allied pieces come about creating that culture. And I love hearing the story about your culture that you're creating, where you're you can have your team look after your child. 26 years ago, I was taking my son, he's 26 now, but I took him in a car seat and rocked him under the table while I was doing meetings with people. And it was about breaking those barriers and saying, look, I'm a woman with children, but I've still got a brain. I can do my job. So all hail to those organisations that are making those breakthroughs and are celebrating different women at different stages in their lives.
Definitely. Amber.
Hi, I just thought I've had a male mentor for quite a while, and I wonder about his view of me is so unrelated to my gender, and his passion about putting me forwards and encouraging me is what drives our relationship. And so my focus, and I'm just almost just thinking aloud right now, but we need to get to men and get them to find this passion, to actually acknowledge, hey, I'm a part of this and I have the power to actually help in this situation. And so I think in industries where there are men who are in higher positions, they're not just to be blamed or to be feel guilty. They're to be used very powerfully and to raise other people up. And so leadership qualities are relational. Think how many women how relational they are and how much of a strength that is in leadership. Take that one strength and invest in it with somebody in a higher position and see where that person can get to. It's just I think that is a very big point of not just have women who are your role models, but also have men that are really lifting you up and not sort of obviously acknowledging that you are a woman in this business, in this industry, but that's not the biggest thing that we're tackling. That it's not the thing that is the focus. The thing is about developing you as a leader, no matter if you're male or female, however you identify. So that's personally been a big thing for me, because they've said to me things that I would say a woman, a role model, would never say to me, because it would be too direct or it would be too harsh, things like that. And actually, I wonder if there are strengths for men in this role as well as women.
I agree with you. I mean, coming from a recruitment agency, when I first started in recruitment 10 years ago, I think I was maybe the only female or maybe one other. So my role models and have all been men, and they get excited when I achieve things, personally and professionally. So I think 100%. Agree with that. I want to move on now to a Q&A because we've got some other people on here, or lots of other people on here, which is nice. If you're sort of got any questions, raise your hands. Vicky will take you off speaker and let's have some conversations. Has anybody got any questions?
I have a question, if that's okay. So I'm Mustard's youngest female leader, in the SLT, And I was just wondering what advice you would give to maybe young leaders that are looking to kind of, take a bit more control, put their, mark on the world, whatever you want to call it. Like, what would you say to them in that kind of position? And that's to anyone. Yeah.
I would say go hard or go home. And if you're questioning yourself and whether you can do something, just say, would a man be asking himself this same question? Because I thought it was really interesting what Amber just said about having male mentors. So most of my peer group running agencies are men. And one of them I went for a coffee with, and he told me how he would love to employ me and how employable he thought I was. And I was like, well, yeah, of course I'm employable. I run an agency. But it's about, he was obviously looking down on me and seeing me as like beneath him. So I think it's almost like, in that same respect, would I question going to a male agency owner and saying, I'd love to hire you? It's having that almost like that bolshy confidence to go, I don't care what anyone think. I'm just going to go for it. So if you see a role and you want it, grab it with both hands and say, right, I'm going to go for that. Or if you have an opinion on a matter, your voice matters, so say it. Like, would a man sit there wondering if anyone wants to hear what he's got to say? Like, I'd probably say no. So I'd say, like, that's been my mantra for this year, is like, go hard or go home. Like, say what you need to say, do what you need to do. Don't worry whether people question it or think it's wrong. Yes, you'll probably make mistakes along the way. And if you do, you'll learn from them, which, the greatest things you can ever do is fail, because you will learn much more from failing than succeeding. But ultimately, you've just got to set that goal, and you've just got to go for it with blinkers on. Like, there's absolutely nothing else that matters than you getting to that place. And yeah, you will 100% do it.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
I love that. I want to go and do loads of stuff now. Molly, you've got your hands up.
My question would be to sort of the female leaders sort of in this chat is how is it that you have built your career confidence, and sort of what challenges have you overcome that have maybe stuck in your mind and that you're sort of proud of specifically?
Kat K.
Yeah, this is something that I feel very, very strongly about. I'm very fortunate that from a young age, my parents always really encouraged me. My dad was always my biggest cheerleader to do the thing, say yes, put my hand up. He used to tell me at school to ask for extra homework, and I thought he was mad, but that was probably one of the best learnings that I took into my career. And I always say, when I look back, and I've done lots of different panels, talks, events, and I look back at my first ever panel and I cringe and I hate it, but exactly as someone just said, you learn more from mistakes. I always encourage my team to make mistakes, because at the end of the day, we're not saving lives. It's a small thing. Whatever you're turning into a huge thing, if it's an event, say you're at Convex or EPF, an event that we were just at last week, there are panels taking place all day long. Someone will hesitate, someone will trip up. I lost my words the other day. I was trying to say something, I couldn't get my idea across. It doesn't matter. And just do it. Really just put yourself out there. Help yourself by making others hold you accountable. So if you have a best friend or you have a colleague or perhaps someone else who runs a business, and hold each other accountable. We spoke a bit about mentorship, but sort of partnerships with other women, encourage one another. If you're hesitating whether to put yourself forward for an award, do it. I could really talk about this for a long time, but just whatever it is you're hesitating, just do it, try it, and then look back in 5-10 years and laugh, because when you've done it multiple times, it is no longer an issue.
Thanks, Kat. Phil?
Sorry, I was just going back on the point previously, just about male mentors and female mentors. I've been lucky enough to have both in my life and in the professional world. And the way I looked at it was I always took advice, both from male and female, but I would always want to take that advice and implement it in my way. And I just think that's something that everybody can take forward with themselves in both personal and professional life. I don't think it matters who your mentors are. You take that advice and put your own spin on it all the time.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Tia?
Hey, yeah, I just have a question on the kind of think like a man type of comment, I suppose. My question would be, obviously, there's still the problem where, when you're standing your ground as a woman, or you feel like you're doing the right thing and you're really firm in your decision and you're really confident about that, and the people around you, maybe the leadership around you, may knock that down a few pegs? Like, how do you deal with that?
You're in the wrong environment if that's the case. And then you get out and you walk out that door and you find the people that do champion you and support you and recognise your value. Because if they don't see your value in that situation, they never will. And I think it's about recognising your value and knowing that you're worth something and actually saying, do you know what, I'm better than this if you can't see it. The one thing I was just going to say to caveat what I said about think like a man is also lean into being a woman. So as a female boss, one of the things I've always known is an attribute to myself is that I'm a very empathetic leader. I think empathy is a key part of being female, and I've often seen that empathy as a weakness. And actually, one of the things I would say is I have a very high retention rate of staff because a lot of them have bought into me and my leadership. So sometimes it's not a bad thing to think and be a woman, and actually utilising that to your strengths in a world that is so male dominated can actually be the thing that sets you apart from everyone else. But I'd say if people aren't listening to you and they don't see your value, then there's many more people who will see it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks, Grace. That's okay. We're coming to the end of the hour. Conscious people have places to be and things to do. I really want to say thank you for everybody joining on this. It was nice to do something, instead of the standard, let's put a photo on LinkedIn of all the women we know, actually having these important conversations and helping each other out. I think we've got one more slide in here, actually, Vic, about sort of pledges. How can we take action? It'd be nice to hear, I guess, from a couple of people on what you're taking away from today or what you could potentially pledge. I guess I'll start, sort of try and inspire others about inclusion, like keep having these conversations, particularly I guess with my job with junior designers and junior people in the industry and just keep this conversation going really. Kat?
Yeah, thanks. I think for me a key takeout is the idea of confidence, because I think that is just the umbrella. One of the biggest umbrella issues of everything, including what we've talked about in terms of leaning into being a woman, all this, it is all about that. So for me and my team, I have lots of junior female designers. We're actually working on an initiative at the moment called Get Even, where we're doing mentorship programs for women. And we're trying to work out what exactly that thing is that we need to mentor and teach. And it's been really eye-opening today because we just had a crit about it this morning about confidence and whether we should lean into that and whether it was leadership, but confidence supersedes leadership. So I pledge to keep pushing for confidence in my team and the initiatives we do.
Has anybody else got any? Ebony, sorry, Ebony, I cut you off earlier.
No, that's okay. I think how I'm going to take action is bringing more confidence into my role and like not doubting myself. And like you said, going hard or go home. And in the future, becoming a leader for others and bringing that into my leadership role in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Ebony. So I guess that concludes today's session. Thank you so much for everybody for getting involved. Really appreciate it. This has been recorded, so we'll send it round to all of you if you want to listen to your own voices back, share it, get inspired. But thank you very much for joining today. It's been really nice to see anybody. And definitely swap contact details. Let's keep this conversation going.